please get us some medication. It's simple. It's simple. There's no convulsions with it. It's just simple. Just please get it. Before it's too late, the GDF will be here. I tell you, get moving, get moving, get moving. Yeah.
And that is from the Death Tape from the People's Temple.
He was slurring his speeches a little bit there.
He might have been on amphetamines. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's amphetamines. This is going to be a serious episode today as we finish out Jonestown and the People's Temple. This is Jen.
This is Becky.
And this is Too Close to Home. Sorry to bum you out right from the get-go. So I know that we have been making a lot of jokes at Jim Jones' expense for these last 4 episodes. I know you have enjoyed it. I know this one is going to be a far more serious because we are going to be listening to some, not all of the Death Tape, but some excerpts from it and probably some of the more harder ones. So if you don't think you can handle it, I would definitely recommend probably avoiding this episode and just reading up about it versus listening to these. It was hard for me to digest, so I know it's probably going to be hard for y'all to digest. And that being said,
let's get it on.
Let's do this. Last time we were talking about the mass exodus, what life was like in Jonestown, how we had the 16 shitters, the holes in the ground, all these white knights that started and everything. This time we're going to talk about Congressman Leo Ryan, the end of the white knights and the very last one. If you cannot deal with suicide, death, torture, violence, physical abuse, mental abuse, spiritual abuse, if you can, I mean, you're fucking balls of steel. But if any of these things being played live will trigger you, please avoid this. This is your last warning. I'm not warning you anymore.
There's a lot of triggers, Jennifer.
I heard you like triggers, so I got triggers for your triggers for your triggers. I went horde. So let's talk about Congressman Leo Ryan. He was friends with a former Temple member, Bob Houston, whose mutilated body was found near train tracks on October 5th, 1976. If you recall, his family left the church and he stayed behind and he, quote unquote, fell asleep on train tracks.
I try to remember now.
3 days after a taped telephone conversation with Houston's ex-wife in which they discussed his leaving the temple, Ryan's interest was further aroused by the custody battle between the leader of the Concerned Relatives group, Timothy Stone, and Jim Jones. He was also one of 91 congressmen to write the Guyanese Prime Minister Forbes Burnham on Stone's behalf. After reading an article in the San Francisco Examiner, Ryan declared his intention to go to Jonestown. If you recall, that article was the one where they had actual pictures of people who were victims and their testimony. And so that really helped turn the tide of people running into Jim Jones' arms to abandoning him. His decision was also influenced by the Concerned Relatives group, which consisted primarily of Californians, as did the Temple, and by his own distaste for social justice. He was fucking dramatic. He was like that guy who would be like an in-bed reporter, but as a politician. So in 1970, he had actually used a pseudonym and had himself arrested, detained, strip searched so he could investigate the conditions of California's prisons. He stayed for 10 days as an inmate in Folsom State Prison while presiding as chairman on the assembly committee that oversaw prison reform. That's how diehard he was about it. But he also was a showboater, so he's like, let me have my cameras.
Yeah.
I'm going to need my reporters with me. Catch all my statements.
I roll.
Right. He's a politician, after all, I guess.
Yeah.
He sent a letter weeks in advance to announce his intentions to investigate in person and when he would be arriving in Jonestown. So it wasn't like he just popped in. I think that a lot of people think that he surprised him because it's not the most known part of the People's Temple story. But he did. He announced way ahead, like, we're going to be here around this time, which gives them enough time to prepare if you think about it. Like, if they really are fucking up, having that notice is kind of not the best idea, but he did it anyways.
Well, it's kind of like when they come to the hospital to do, like, their inspections. We know they're coming, like, a week beforehand. So, same as, like, fast food places. When the health departments come in, they know a week beforehand. So everybody's, like, getting all their fucking, ducks in a row.
Marceline would actually convince Jim this could be a positive. They could show that Jonestown wasn't an evil thing they heard, but a pure socialist society, despite not having been there the whole time, and it already being off the rail by the time she actually arrived. She had been in the LA temple running that until the last couple months before the massacre. And so like she arrived and everything was kind of off the rails, but she was so in denial, I guess, that she just kind of overlooked it and was like, no, we're great. People are going to enjoy the shit out of this. They're going to love eating just rice and pits of tendon and, joints and stuff. Who doesn't?
And beans.
Yeah.
And then all of that fiber and then getting just shit into a hole.
Also, reduce, reuse, recycle. I'm using leaves, not paper. Look at us. Look at us.
When I look up vacation spots, that's the first thing I check.
Exactly.
It's really hard to find ones with just holes to shit in anymore. But if you dig deep enough, you can find them, friend. You can find them.
In Guyana, of course.
Just saying. Hit me up. I'll show you all the best B&B, Airbnb spots.
I got you, fam. Say less. Say less. She also hoped that people who wanted to leave would just go with Ryan. And that would make all this bad press die down because there was a lot of words saying like he was holding people hostage, which he actually was.
Yeah.
And, just let the bad apples go. If they're...
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm not sure that the people that you've held hostage, letting them go, is going to get rid of your bad press. I feel like that's just going to amp it up because the first thing I would do is be like, hey, who wants to hear? Let me tell you what they
Let me tell you what they fucking did.
But who am I? No journalist.
Let me tell you about the frog.
Just an armchair journalist over here doing a podcast.
Who am I? Just who am I? So Carolyn Layton was actually more black and white on her viewpoints. Remember, she's one of Jim Jones's side pieces and like one of those top echelon, and basically ran it when he was drugged up, like he always was, like basically all the time. She wrote a memo called Analysis of Future Prospects that was pretty much an unscientific hypothesis that no matter what, Jonestown would end in suicide.
Oh, well.
It included a section called A Final Stand, if decided on, as a procedural and cold way that they could perform mass suicide. So in normal fashion, Jim would read the news over the loudspeaker and sneak in warnings about Ryan for weeks coming. And so here's a little bit of a recording. It's got a good echo in this, so it's going to sound a little distorted, but it's a good reference for his warnings of Congressman Ryan coming.
The U.S. racial campaign. Remember, we are still in a state of siege. We are going to be under siege beginning Tuesday, when the first of the group we have found will be arriving by commercial airlines. We are hoping and feeling that the Guyana government will block them from staying longer. But they are racist elements through and through, though mixed with black and white. They're cooperating with Congressman Ryan, who has voted sharply in racist terms and fascist terms, who is a supporter of Pinochet of Chile. So we will have to be very wise and very alert. Some may be coming by plane. We know those limited number of about 15 that will be arriving Tuesday night by plane. But there's still a persistent rumor from our reliable infiltrators that they are planning to come in secretly upriver. So we must unify and forget what little differences and disagreements and what we may feel are deprivations, and realize that we are under the onslaught of a direct move of a mercenary fascist effort from the United States of America. I love you very deeply, and we'll be seeing you in People's Rally shortly. You can discuss the news there in the beginning part of the session. Thank you, and I love you so very much.
We love you too, Jim Jones.
It has that echo because I think they were recording in the radio room that they had. Mm-hmm. And so you're hearing the echo of it going throughout the fucking camp. You remember how he did that shit 24 hours a day? Like, Jim, let it go.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus. Kill me now. These are his warnings that the proverbial chickens have come home to roost, with Ryan and the baby killers of America that are coming to kill and maim the righteous People's Temple. In a way, I guess the enemy really was on the steps. With all the hysteria he was trying to accomplish within the temple, by the time the congressman and others arrived, it would be reaching a whole new fever pitch of fear and panic. People would have gone days without sleep, with Jim drilling the lies of terror to them. Marceline was able to convince Jim to let the boys of the basketball team go to Georgetown for a tournament, because he was like keeping everybody real locked down, knowing that this was about to go down. The team was the worst basketball team, FYI. They were like a dysfunctional Mighty Ducks, if you remember that movie from the 90s.
I do.
Jim would announce that they won when they did not, until it got to the point where he would just brag like, well, they only lost by a little bit. Like, basically, it was tied. Basically. They went off, of course, to Georgetown for this couple-day tournament, and that included Jim Jones' son, Stephen. And we'll come back to that in a minute. Ryan and his entourage would arrive in Guyana on November 14th, 1978. There were 2 of his staff members, 9 members of the media, and 13 concerned relatives, including Tim and Grace Stone. Eventually, they flew from there to the Port Kaituma airstrip with only 4 family members, 2 staffers, Ryan and the journalist. They were greeted warmly by members of Jonestown, but they would not let everybody go. They would let only Ryan and his staffers, none of the family, and 8 of the 9 journalists to come into Jonestown. The 9th journalist was from the National Enquirer, and he was denied because he had negative press against Jones previously, and he was like, you're cool, not you, fuck you. I read that story. The settlers had rehearsed and worked around the clock to make Jonestown look like a paradise, and it worked. He was impressed with everything that he saw. They started interviewing people who stated that they were perfectly happy, none wanted to leave, and it was just minor issues with a few people, nothing serious. They gave him a full tour, allowed the press to speak to the citizens of Jonestown, so everything at the time appeared above board. On the night of the 17th, Jim and the People's Temple hosted Ryan and his entourage for dinner at the pavilion. And instead of rice and the scraps they were used to, they were served a nice actual meal with pork. So these people were fucking stoked. Like,
all the regular Joes got it too?
Yep. All the regular Jonestown. Like, so it looked like they got this shit every day. Like, well, you can look at these people and see that they're emaciated. The only fat one is Jim Jones.
That's what I've been playing in my head as you're talking, is how did they go there and everything seemed kosher? Like, did they all of a sudden build a bunch of bathrooms and potties? Did they all of a sudden have rolls of toilet paper? Did everybody all of a sudden clean and gain weight? Like, I'm so confused, but, I'm like, carry on. Maybe I'm.
I mean, it was the 70s. Who knows that the congressman wasn't, as well. Like, This looks fucking great, guys. I like this. This is a sweet little spot, Jim. The Jonestown Express performed, and people started giving testimonies. Marceline then introduced Ryan to the crowd, and he gave this address.
He comes to us from California. He has represented many of us who have lived in his district back in California, and we welcome you, and we'd like for you to say a few words to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marceline. I'm not used to making public speeches. What are you going to with that here, I guess? I don't know. I'm very, very glad to be here. I already have met a former student of mine. I've already met a former classmate of one of my daughters at the Mills High School in Burlingame. Many of you, I discover, are from my own area and my own congressional district, as a matter of fact, in San Mateo County. So we are at least friends in that extent. I'm very glad to be here. This is a congressional inquiry, and I think that all of you know that I'm here to find out more about questions that have been raised about your operation here. But I can tell you right now that from the few conversations I've had with some of the folks here already this evening, that whatever the comments are, there are some people who never had one of them in their whole life. for that kind of response. I feel terrible that you can't all register to vote in San Mateo County. The purpose is serious, but obviously they're... Pardon? By proxy, okay. We'll do that if we can. It's really a pleasure. Hospitality you've shown me already. My work here is important to me. I know it's very important to you, too. I hope to be through here tomorrow sometime. In the meantime, you're obviously having a very good time tonight. I don't want to spoil any more with political speeches. Just let me say thank you on behalf of my staff, on behalf of the press who are here, on behalf of the relatives who are in here now, for hosting us here this evening. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So in the midst of all the revelry, Temple member Vernon Gosley handed NBC correspondent Don Harris a note. He had mistaken him for Congressman Ryan. And the note read, "Vernon Gosley and Monica Bagby, please help us get out of Jonestown."
Yee.
But because he was so nervous, he actually dropped the note and then picked it up and handed it to Don, and a kid caught it. And you have not, or you have watched Game of Thrones?
Yes.
So Varys, you know how he had all his little birds, all these children?
Mm-hmm.
Fucking Jim Jones had his own fucking little birds. Kids were
course.
taught to like dime people out. I mean, everybody did. So immediately once the kid saw that, he started yelling, "He passed a note! He passed a note!" And things get really tense all of a sudden.
I don't condone punching children in the face,
Mm-hmm.
but in this instance, I approve.
Justified.
Yes. I approve.
Oh, right in the throat. Try screaming now, bitch.
That's right, little motherfucker. Say it now.
Although Jim more than likely knew it happened, he didn't react. And at that night, the press left for Port Kaituma and left Ryan sleeping in Jonestown, which sounds fucking super dangerous, but nothing happened. And I don't know if it's because Jim Jones wanted the press to witness stuff of what's going down, but he went to sleep just fine. The next morning, Ryan awoke to a ton of people clamoring to leave Jonestown. So the day before, everybody's like, "Yeah, it's all copacetic. We great. We love shitting in holes." And then
10 out of 10 would recommend.
exactly, man. Have you not had that fragrance? That, whoo, so good. Stand up wind. He had these people just like all of a sudden change their story 360 because they knew that other people were trying to leave. So it was like opening the floodgates. And he was not very prepared, as he thought this was just an inquiry, that this would not come to pass and that nothing crazy would happen. He also found that 11 people had escaped into the jungle that night and more wanted to leave.
Oh, wow.
Jim and Marceline tried to convince the defectors still around to stay, to no avail. It was just complete pandemonium. People who were defecting were yelled at and called traitors by people who were staying. People begged Leo to take their children like in the Titanic. You could sense a combustion was about to happen. Now, when all was said and done, only 26 people, 15 that day and 11 the night before, wanted to defect out of the 934 there. That's less than 3%.
That's it?
That's it. This...
There had to be people just scared
Oh, absolutely.
to leave.
Oh, I would think
They're
so.
afraid
Like,
of the tigers out
well,
there.
if they fucking survive, I'll consider it. But if these bitches die, hey, Jim, I love you.
Like I said before, I'd take my chances with the tigers.
Yeah, tiger, take me away.
Exactly.
Marceline was like, this is a fucking win. All the bad apples, the people who've been complaining and shit, they're going.
More beans for the rest of us.
More beans and rice for the rest of us. And even the temple lawyers were like, this is fucking amazing. But to Jim, one was too much. He thought, well, it's only the beginning. It's not going to stop at 26.
He was onto something there.
Mm-hmm. The press, of course, were there, and they wanted to speak with Jim as new people are wont to do. And it got severely awkward. And there was this interview where the press walked up to him, and he's sitting down, and it's very tense. And here's a clip from that interview.
People play games, friend. They lie. What can I do about lies? Are you people going to leave us? I just beg you, please leave us.
So that it was just completely, like, you could see people, of course, all of this is recorded.
That was Jim Jones?
That was Jim Jones. It was all these people, walking around, packing stuff up, other people yelling at those people, kids crying, people crying. It's fucking crazy. With Jim's mind, at that moment, he decided this is it. Time's up. Time to put the plan into action. So he got together Larry Layton, Joseph Wilson, and Thomas Keiss to plan on taking out Leo Ryan. It would be kind of like a sleeper agent scenario. They would get on the plane and take it down with the congressman. Larry would approach Leo Ryan and ask to defect as well. So, of course, Leo was like, sure, more merrier, I guess. And with more defectors than anticipated, they had to call 2 planes because originally they came on 1 plane. However, many of the defectors were freaking out because Larry was there and they knew him for a fact to be a loyal follower of Jim Jones. So it sent up a lot of red flags like, bro. Don't mean to tell you do your job. But that motherfucker right there, that is Jim Jones 2.0. We knew that they knew something was about to go down, but they weren't sure. And I don't know if he just ignored it and he was like, well, maybe he changed his mind or he's good. Like, who's to say? But I could imagine somebody who was in the upper echelon of Jim Jones' menagerie of weirdos be a present in this, we're all defecting, being a little sus.
Right.
Being remote as they were, and in the time of no cell phones, Ryan had to arrange this from the Jonestown radio room, and Jones realized there would be no guarantee Larry would be on the same plane as Leo. Another crux in the plan was that Leo had decided to stay behind at the last minute to allow more room for the defectors to board and leave. So Jones had to improvise and pull aside member Don Sly. Now, Don is from Indiana, and he's a white guy. But I guess he became one with the jungle, and he called himself Ujara.
Okay.
So he pulled Ujara to the side and was like, you need to kill Leo right now, right here. So while Ryan was talking to the temple attorneys, Ujara turned to Ryan and brought a knife to his throat and said, motherfucker, it's time for you to die.
Oh.
But Ujara hesitated. I don't know if it was cold feet or a crack in the cult hold. It was enough time for him to be wrestled to the ground. And people who witnessed this interaction said that he was in tears. Ujara was the whole time. And it appeared that he was more bewildered and scared than violent. Like, you could see he's ready to go murder him, and then he just freezes, and it's like, what the fuck's happening?
Right.
So in the process of wrestling him down, Ujara's hand gets cut. The knife wound spurts blood all over Ryan. And in the tapes, you can kind of see pictures of him as they head to the airstrip. With that happening, they decided, let's get the fuck out of here. And like Becky says, it's time to shag ass. And they head to the airstrip where the other defectors were, because some of them had already headed to Port Kaituma, and then Leo and a couple others were still behind. While he knew it was serious, he could not anticipate this being a directive from Jim Jones. And he was more concerned about helping people out of there than himself, which is very unusual for a politician. And here is a interview afterwards where he's talking about the attack.
What happened? Well, we were, all of a sudden, we had a whole lot of people at the last minute who wanted to go, suddenly rushed forward and said, we want to leave. We knew about 2 as early as last night. We knew about a family this morning that said, we got to go. And you have to understand there's a high degree of agitation on the part of those who want to go, and they were really very much in fear. And so we made arrangements for them. And of course, the transportation is extremely limited and very difficult. So we had to begin planning. And of course, most of these people, if they come out, will not have enough food and won't have enough clothing, a place to stay, and the rest. So we had to begin a real operation, at which point we divided up the work, and my responsibility, among the 3 of us, my assistant and the deputy chief of mission, Snyder and I, my job is to stay behind and get the list of people who wanted to go, make sure they had their stuff, make sure they made their declarations they wanted to leave, and just keep it straight. And I was doing that, which included going with some of them to get their belongings because they were reluctant to go back to their buildings alone. And I think in the process, people could see me doing that and were pretty hostile about it, apparently, from the looks they gave and some of the comments they made, not to me, but to the people who were leaving. And the next thing I knew, back in the pavilion, we had the group beginning to get together. I stood up and had been talking with the two attorneys for the temple, and suddenly the knife was around my neck, and I was in danger. And I pushed the hand away, fell back against him. Others grabbed him and pulled him off me. And that's where we are. Who grabbed him?
Now, simultaneously going on, the Jonestown basketball team
Was on a winning streak?
Oh, yeah. Woo! Yes, they were. They're in Georgetown for that tournament. Remember that, like I said, Stephen Jones, which is the only biological son of Jim Jones via Marceline, the oldest, I guess. And the other players were hanging out at the Georgetown embassy. And then a message comes across the radio. A lot of people have gone to see Miss Frazier. I think Miss Brownfield has offered to help. This meant that people were dead, and it's time for mass suicide.
Oh.
This was also relayed to the San Francisco and LA temple. And Stephen, who, with the assistance of his mother, knew he was the only person to calm his dad down. But the problem is he's in Georgetown. He's not there to help his mother. So, like, even if he had left that moment, you'd have to get from Georgetown to Port Kaituma and then the 7 miles to Jonestown. And then there were also 25 armed guards. So it's no hope. So he focused on keeping the embassy members in Georgetown and to keep them from committing suicide, and then talking down the San Francisco temple from suicide.
Oh, that's good that he was like, y'all, chill. My dad's crazy. Let's not do this, okay?
Yeah, like, y'all don't know. Motherfucker's high. He does this at least twice a week. Me and Mom's like, fucking dad. So he was able to stave off any attempts until he looks away for just a minute. And in that moment, there was enough time for Sharon Amos and Chuck Beekman and Sharon's 3 children to lock themselves in the bathroom. She slit her throat, the split throat of her 3 children, and then her own. And Chuck did soon afterwards. And those were the only casualties outside of the town of Jonestown. But devastating and crazy to think that she took her kids in there and did that.
Mm-mm.
And I'm sure he fucking still lives with that shit. He's still alive.
Jim's son, Stephen.
Mm-hmm. So back at the airstrip, though, Leo Ryan and his entourage, as well as the defector, were loading onto the second plane. The Red Brigade pulled up as the first plane was taxiing down the runway. It was a smaller 6-seat Cessna, and it was taxiing with Larry Layton inside. Now, Leo wasn't in this, but he starts shooting off, right? Wounding several of the passengers, including Monica Bagby and Vernon Gosley, who started the whole open floodgates. He insisted so much to be on that first plane that Ryan's assistant was actually nervous about flying with Larry Layton.
Yeah.
I would be too.
Sames.
Meanwhile, the Red Brigade pulls up. They immediately started opening fire on the defectors and Ryan's crew. Ryan, 3 journalists, and a defecting temple member were killed, while wounding 9 others. As Vernon Gosney was shot in the airplane, he looked out and saw the others shooting and stated, "They're killing everyone." Then turned around and looked at his wounds and, in shock, stated, "Larry Layton shot me." Once down, the brigade shot Leo Ryan's body and face 20-plus times.
Oh, my.
And then they retreated back to Jonestown.
So, homie, we just watched the interview with him. They shot him 20-plus times?
Not long after that, the plane taxis off, and there is video. You don't see all of the shooting happen, but you see them pull up, and then you start hearing gunfire. And that's when it happens. And so they head back to Jonestown for the final white night, and there really isn't an exact, like, they don't know exactly who were all in that group of shooters, but they believe there was about 9. And while not all the identities are known, people and many sources agree that Joe Wilson, Stanley Geig, and Thomas Keiss Sr. and Ronnie Dennis were among those people attacking. Funnily enough, the Guyanese government was on the other end of the airstrip with some soldiers. There was a plane that Guyana owned that was in disrepair, and so they were just guarding it, and they didn't not get involved. They were like, "Ooh, like that's a personal problem." Could you imagine? I understand probably why. Like, this could have been it's Americans, That's a fucking congressman. I'm just gonna look the other way. None of this should happen.
You said you understand.
I kind of do, because it could have been an international incident. Because, I mean, think about Venezuela. That was keeping Venezuela from invading Guyana. The fear of the American government and what they will bring down. I mean, look at Vietnam. It's like, what do you do? It's a very tough existential question, I guess is what I mean. I would personally like to help if I was a soldier and had the wherewithal. As somebody who does not,
I guess just because I'm thinking it's Jonestown, so like it's not like it's the American Army base and some shit's popping off and you're like turning your cheek because you're like, that's the American government. It's fucking crazy ass Jonestown. So I'd be like, let's go.
This is like elderly people and children.
Yeah,
like getting slain.
So I get the whole like, let's not get caught up in their politics, but it's not an army base or a navy base or, you know what I mean? That we're like minding our business. It's fucking Jonestown.
Yeah, right. That makes
sense. And y'all know what the fuck's going on out there, whether you say you do or don't.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
What that came down to is we're not getting involved because we get paid.
It's like another one of those like fucking Americans. They're out here in our fucking jungle doing weird ass shit.
Exactly. It's exactly what it is.
Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Back in Jonestown, everyone was gathered at the pavilion in a calm manner for a white night. But this night felt different. They were not aware of the shooting in Kaituma because it's 7 miles away. The sound probably just didn't carry. And with how calm everyone was, they assumed it would just be a regular meeting to talk about the congressman's visit and the defections. Armed guards surrounded the pavilion as a witness heard Jim Jones state, "Can you make it less bitter?" We're going to go through parts of the death tape now. So I know that this is very real. And these were real people and real victims who ingested this poison. And we don't normally have documentation of people's death like this. So to hear it, it's heart-wrenching. It's soul-crushing. Some people went willingly, and you'll hear many who did not want to go quietly into the good night. This tape lasts about 45 minutes, and I will not be playing it in its entirety, but certain clips. During this tape, 900 plus people are dying, and their final moments are recorded. Side note, it is weirdly available on Audible to purchase.
Stop. I don't mean to laugh. I know this is very
That's
serious,
what I was
sad.
like, what the fuck? Because like I was looking for Road to Jonestown because I can't read books. I have to have Audible. It's easier for me to digest and write notes at the same time. And I'm like looking and I'm like trying to see if there's any other books that maybe I should read. And that pulls up and I'm like, there's no way. And it sure as fucking fire is the death tape. I was like, damn, Amazon, you in dork. Shit. Even YouTube has that. It's like, I understand the Jonestown archives having that, but sometimes the world just doesn't make sense.
On a daily basis, I say that.
So after Ryan's departure from Jonestown to Port Kaituma, Marceline Jones made a broadcast on the public address system stating that everyone was all right and asking residents to return to their homes. And during this time, Dr. Schacht, remember the doctor that used to be a drug addict? Him and his aides prepared a large metal tub with grape flavor aid, poisoned with diphenhydramine, promethazine, chlorpromazine, chloroquine, chlorohydrate, diazepam, and cyanide. Schacht used a single pound of cyanide after months of testing, and that pound cost a mere $8.85.
Wow.
Let's start off with Jim beginning to speak to his people very gently.
This is audible.
I was like,
yeah, you gotta leave that in. That's fucking Jim. This is audible.
He knew he was selling it before.
Right.
How very much I've loved you. How very much I've tried my best to give you the good life. But in spite of all of that I've tried, a handful of our people, with their lies, have made our life impossible. There's no way to detach ourselves from what's happened today. Not only we're in a compound situation, not only are there those who have left and committed the betrayal of the century. Some have stolen children from others, and they're in pursuit right now to kill them because they stole their children. And we are sitting here waiting on a powder keg. I don't think this is what we want to do with our babies. I don't think that's what we had in mind to do with our babies. It was said by the greatest of prophets from time immemorial, no man takes my life from me, I lay my life down.
So Becky just gave me I would say fun fact, but it's not really fun, I guess. But one of the drugs used in that is phenergan, and phenergan is a anti-nausea medicine, and it probably was to help them keep from regurgitating or throwing up the poison. So that's very eye-opening.
Yeah.
There was a lot of thought that went into that.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to listen to a recording of him starting to ease them into what's about to happen.
What's going to happen here in a matter of a few minutes is that one of those people on that plane is going to shoot the pilot. I know that. I didn't plan it, but I know it's going to happen. They're going to shoot that pilot, and down comes that plane into the jungle. And we had better not have any of our children left when it's over, because they'll parachute in here on us. I'm telling you just as plain as I know how to tell you, I've never lied to you. I never have lied to you. I know that's what's going to happen. That's what he intends to do, and he will do it. He'll do it. Fortunately, being so bewildered with many, many pressures on my brain, seeing all these people behave so treasonous, it was just too much for me to put together, but I now know what he was telling me, and it'll happen. If the plane gets in the air, even. So my opinion is that we be kind to children and be kind to seniors and take the portion like they used to take in ancient Greece and step over quietly, because we are not committing suicide. It's a revolutionary act. We can't go back. They won't leave us alone. They're now going back to tell more lies, which means more congressmen, and there's no way we can survive.
In the midst of this, Christine Walker and some, but very few, spoke in support of contacting Russia in lieu of a suicide plan. She's met with jowls and anger as people are ready to go, hanging on Jim's every word.
So during these recordings that we're listening to right now, have they already drank the poison?
No. During this part, they start giving out to the children first. In fact, Dr. Schacht...
Was that when he's talking about the children and the elderly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's been for, weeks telling them that that's what's going to happen to them, is that they're going to fly out of these planes and they're going to kill our children and they're going to kill our elderly, and we're going to do what's right and let them die first.
Okay.
Okay, logic? Sure. As this is going on, think about Jim in his little lawn chair talking, and everybody in the audience, there's a lot of them standing, and there is nurses with syringes and like little drippers in that big ass vat, and they're going ahead and starting to give that to the babies. They were the first ones.
God, that's so awful.
Mm-hmm. So Christine, you know,
I guess it's better than having your mom slit your throat in the bathroom.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll find out in a second.
Mm.
Christine Walker and all them, like, they had all been taking Russian lessons and stuff. So they thought Russia was still on the fucking table, even though it never really was. So this is going to be her talking a little bit about, like, we have better options, y'all. Why are we going to drink this? Like,
well, I said let's make an airlift to Russia. That's what I say. I don't think nothing is impossible.
Well, how are we going to
believe it?
How are you going to airlift to Russia?
Well, I thought they said if we got in an emergency, they gave you a code to let them know.
No, they did. They gave us the code that they'd let us know of an issue, not us create an issue for them. They said if they saw the country coming down, they'd give us the code. They give us a code. You can check on there and see if it's on the code. You can check with Russia to see if they'll take us in immediately, otherwise we die. I don't know what else you say to these people. But to me, death is not a fearful thing. It's living that's treacherous. I have never seen anything like this before in my life. I've never seen people take the law and do in their own hands and provoke us and try to purposely agitate murder of children. There's no, Christine, it's not worth living like this. Not worth living like this.
I think that there were too few who left for 1,200 people to give them their lives for those people that left.
You know how many left?
20 odd. That's a small
20 odd. Compared
to what's here.
20 odd. But what's going to happen when they don't leave? I hope that they could leave, but what's going to happen when they don't leave?
You mean the people here?
Yeah, what's going to happen to us when they don't leave, when they get on the plane and the plane goes down?
I don't think it'll go down.
You don't think it'll go down? I wish I could tell you were right, but I'm right. There's one man there who blames, and rightfully so, Debbie Blakey for the murder of his mother, and he'll stop that pilot by any means necessary. He'll do it. That plane will come out of the air. There's no way you fly a plane without a pilot.
I wasn't speaking about that plane. I was speaking about the plane for us to go to Russia.
To Russia. Do you think Russia's going to want? No, not going to. We're not. You think Russia's going to want us with all this stigma? We had some value, but now we don't have any value.
Well, I don't see it like that. I mean, I feel like that as long as there's life, there's hope. That's my faith.
Well, everybody dies. Someplace that hope runs out because everybody dies. I haven't seen anybody yet that didn't die. And I like to choose my own kind of death for a change. I'm tired of being tormented to hell. That's what I'm tired of. Tired of it. 1,200 people's lives in my hands, and I certainly don't want your life in my hand. But I'm going to tell you, Christine, without me, life has no meaning. I'm the best friend you'll ever have. And once I have to pay, I'm standing with you, Jara. I'm standing with those people. They're part of me. I can detach myself. My attorney says detach myself. No. I never detached myself from any of your troubles. I've always taken your troubles right on my shoulders. And I'm not going to change that now. It's too late. I've been running too long. I'm not going to change now. Maybe the next time you get to go to Russia, the next time around. What I'm talking about now is in the dispensation of judgment. This is a revolutionary suicide council. I'm not talking about self-destruction. I'm talking about what we have no other road. I will take your call. We will put it to the Russians, and I can tell you the answer now because I'm a prophet. Call the Russians and tell them, see if they'll take us.
I said I'm afraid to die.
I don't
By
think
no
you are.
means.
I don't think you are.
But I look at our babies and I think they deserve to live.
I agree.
You know?
But also they deserve, what's more, they deserve peace.
We all came here for peace.
And have we had it?
No.
I tried to give it to you. I've laid down my life practically. I've practically died every day to give you peace. And you've still not had any peace. You look better than I've seen you in a long while, but it's still not the kind of peace that I wanted to give you. So, a person's a fool that continues to say that you're a winner when you're losing. Win one, lose two. What?
So she's persistent, and Jim calls her an agitator, and he keeps talking to her as if he's almost trying to convince her that this is the only way.
I like the way he told her there's no life without him.
Yes.
I remind JJ of that daily.
It's true.
There's no life
Sign
without
me off. I'm getting in the casket with you. Just as they're giving testimonies about like what Jim Jones has done for them and how they're happily going to do this, the news of Ryan's death is announced.
I tried so very, very hard. We're trying over here to see what can happen in Los Angeles. Who is it? Get Dwyer out of here before something happens to him. Dwyer? I'm not talking about you, Jara. I said Dwyer. Ain't nobody gonna take you, Jara. I'm not letting them take you, Jara. Gather in, folks. It's easy. It's easy. Yes, my love.
At one time, I felt just like Christine felt. But after today, I don't feel anything because the biggest majority of the people that left here were white. And I know it really hurt my heart because
Broke your heart, didn't it?
It broke my heart to think that all of these years that these white people have been with us and they're not a part of us. So we might as well end it now because I don't see...
Talking. The congressman has been murdered. It's all over, all over. What a legacy, what a legacy. But the Red Brigade's the only ones that ever made any sense anyway. They invaded our privacy, they came into our home, they followed us 6,000 miles away. The Red Brigade showed them justice. The congressman's dead.
When did he get such a lisp?
I think a lot of it's just the drug use.
Jesus.
I mean, he was like, I did not say you, Jara. I'm like, motherfucker, if he wasn't so like fucking hard to understand.
Yeah.
Like Boomhauer over here. Jesus. The first person to die was a willing 20-year-old woman who held her baby. The rest were not as willing, obviously. They were given a choice, which he called humane, that they were welcome to die with their children or after their children had died. Like that was their right. Death by cyanide is not easy and painless, as Jim states. Also, I'm worried I had to Google the fact, like cyanide.
What happens when you drink cyanide?
What happens and what happens to people? Because like I'm at this point in our podcast, the FBI has me on every list.
Same.
Fasha. Cyanide prevents the cells of the body from using oxygen, and when this happens, the cells die. Cyanide is more harmful to the heart and brain than the other organs because the heart and brain use a lot of oxygen. In small cases of poisoning, you'll experience symptoms like nausea, dizziness, vomiting, and if the dose is large enough, some of the following may happen: convulsions, loss of consciousness, low blood pressure, lung injury, respiratory failure leading to death, slow heart rate. And in Jonestown, some people died in minutes, and some people took 20 plus minutes to die, some almost an hour. One by one, as they die, you hear some of the People's Temple most allegiant members giving thanks and testifying their love for Jim Jones, with the anguished moans in the background.
Yes, yes, yes.
Because I said I never wanted to live with you guys in this time. And I appreciate you for everything. You're the only, and I appreciate you.
Please, can we hasten with that medication? You don't know what you've done. I tried. Move, please move.
What's it told me with 2 GDF?
They saw it happen and ran in the bush and dropped their machine guns. I never in my life. But there'll be more. You got to move. Are you going to get the medication here? You got to move. Marston, there's about 40 minutes.
You have to move, and the people that are standing there in the aisle go stay in the radio room yard, but everybody get behind the table and back this way, okay? There's nothing to worry about. Everybody keep calm and try and keep your children calm. And the older children can help love the little children and reassure them. Children aren't crying from pain. It's just a little bitter tasting, but they're not crying out of any pain. Annie McGowan, can I please see you back?
I used to do before I came here. So let me tell you about it. It might make a lot of you feel a little more comfortable. Sit down and be quiet, please. One of the things that I used to do, I used to be a therapist. And the kind of therapy that I did had to do with reincarnation and past life situations. And every time anybody had the experience of going into a past life, I was fortunate enough through Father to be able to let them experience it all the way through their death, so to speak. And everybody was so happy when they made that step to the other side.
When you step, there's no other thing you can do but step that way. It's the only way to step. That choice is not ours now. It's out of our hands.
If you have a body that's been crippled, suddenly you have the kind of body that you want to have.
A little rest.
It feels good. You've never felt so good, family, I tell you. You've never felt so good is how that feels.
And I do hope that those attorneys will stay where they belong and don't come up here. What is it? What is it? Get what? It's hard. Only at first. Only at first is it hard. It's hard only at first. Living, you're looking at death. It only looks. Living is much, much more difficult. Raising up every morning and not knowing what's going to be the night's bringing. It's much more difficult. It's much more difficult.
I just want to say something to everyone that I see that is standing around and crying. This is nothing to cry about. This is something we should all rejoice about. We should be happy about this. They always told us that we should cry when you're coming into this world. Well, when we're living and we're living it peaceful, I think we should be happy about this. I was just thinking about Jim Jones. He just has suffered and suffered and suffered. He is the only God, and he don't even have a chance to enjoy himself here. And I wanted to say one more thing. This is one thing I want to say. That few that's gone, is many more here. He's still, that's not all of us. That's not all yet. That's just a few that has got a chance to get to the one that they could tell their story to, their lives to. So I'm looking at so many people crying. I wish you would not cry and just thank Father. Just thank him. I've been here about...
Just thank him.
Yeah, this is something to rejoice about. Okay.
At some point, Marceline becomes frantic and fighting as they continue to force the members of the People's Temple to take the flavor aid. And this one is the one thing that I remember him saying, like I could hear it in my head every time I see the quote. It's so fucked.
Die with respect, die with a degree of dignity. Lay down your life with dignity. Don't lay down with tears and agony. There's nothing to death. It's like Max said, it's just stepping over into another plane. Don't be this way. Stop this hysterics. This is not the way for people who are socialist, communists to die. No way for us to die. We must die with some dignity. Soon we'll have no choice. Now we have some choice. You think they're going to allow this to be done and allow us to get by with this? Must be insane. Children, it's just something to put you to rest. Oh, God. Mother, 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 please. Mother, please, 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 don't do this, don't do this. Lay down your life with your child, but don't do this. Free at last. Peace. Keep your emotions down, keep your emotions down.
270 children died during this tape. And while I say an hour, I say it loosely as Jim had a pause button on his mic, so it cuts in and out mid-words without any particular rhyme or reason. And as the adults started scooping out the flavor aid, Jim spoke his final recorded words.
The most loving thing all of us could have done. And it's been a pleasure walking with all of you in this revolutionary struggle. No other way I would rather go and give my life for socialism, communism, and I thank Dad very, very much.
That Dad's love and mercy and goodness and kindness and bringing us to this land of freedom, his love, his mother was the advance guard to socialism, and his love and his mercy shall go on forever, on to the fields.
Where's the vat? Where's the vat with the green sea?
Shall go on forever to the fields of pine, and thank you, Dad.
The vat with the green sea in, please. Bring it here so the adults can begin. Beg you, don't fail to follow my advice. You'll be sorry.
You'll be sorry.
That we do it than that they do it. Must trust you. You have to step across. We used to sing this world's not our home. Well, it sure isn't. As we were saying, it sure wasn't. He doesn't want to tell him. All he's doing, if they will tell him, assure these children. Some people assure these children of the relaxation of stepping over to the next plane. We've set an example for others. We've set 1,000 people who say we don't like the way the world is. Who's done? Take our life from us. We laid it down. We got tired. We didn't commit suicide. We committed an act of revolutionary suicide protesting the conditions of an inhumane world.
After the majority were dead, the inner circle took their doses, some by injection, some drinking, some doing both to make sure. Jim, however, would be killed by a single bullet, a wound to the skull while his head rested on a pillow, his trademark glasses gone, and his glassy eyes looking blankly into the sky. Of course he would be a chicken shit. He would. Take the coward's way, make everybody else go through that, drink all that poison, make all those children. But he gets a quick death.
Of course.
There were only 7 survivors. Some hid and some just asked to leave, but those who witnessed it said that while some were forced, most were willing to go. Grover Davis, who's 79, was hearing impaired, missed the announcement to assemble on the loudspeaker, laid down in a bench, and pretended to be dead. There were some that were injected with needles, as is the case of one girl who just kept spitting it out. So they're like, you know what? If you ain't going to drink it, I got something else for you.
Oh, my.
There were bodies found with bent needles in their arms. Some survived by just supreme luck. Hyacinth Thrash, 76, realized what was happening and crawled under her bed, only to walk out after the poisonings were completed. Annie Moore was the last person to die and was believed to be the one who shot Jim. So he didn't even, he couldn't even do it himself. Again, chicken shit. Not saying that's what you like, but come on.
No. I get what you're saying.
Witnesses said that there was a long period of time between the last 2 shots, so it may have been her trying to tidy things up and prepare before taking herself out. And she left a note, and it said, "We died because you would not let us live." Counting all, it was a total of 918 people. Even the dogs and cows had been poisoned, and Mr. Muggs the chimpanzee. Thankfully, Stephen Jones was able to talk those other temples down to prevent any more suicides. Don't drink the Kool-Aid is a phrase we have heard so many times, but it wasn't the impression Jim had hoped to leave. He wanted revolutionary suicide, and he received a terrible one-liner. They didn't even get the brand right.
No.
News hit worldwide on Jonestown and Congressman Ryan's assassination.
An American suspected of taking part in the killing is Larry John Layton, whose age and hometown are not known. The State Department now says attorneys Mark Lane and Charles Gary are in Jonestown, Guyana. Lane, Gary, and several others had been believed missing since last night's attack. ABC's Ted Koppel at the State Department says there has been radio communication between the commune and Guyana's capital of Georgetown, which is how the State Department learned the 2 were safe. Lane and Gary were in Guyana to act as counsel for Jim Jones, the founder of Jonestown. This is ABC News.
The Jonestown mass killing became one of the best-known events in U.S. history, and it was the greatest single loss of American civilian life in a deliberate act until September 11th.
Oh, wow.
Following the deaths in Jonestown, the U.S. and Guyanese governments negotiated over the disposition of the bodies. While a Guyanese doctor did examine some of the bodies and performed an autopsy on Jim Jones and Congressman Ryan, the U.S. did eventually take over the site. Under the command of 4 colonels, the preliminary work of identifying and evacuating the remains commenced. Jonestown was divided into grids, and the bodies found in each individually numbered section were cataloged and tagged. The delays in securing Jonestown's site and the tropical jungle conditions meant that the remains had already started to decompose by the time they were discovered.
Oh, yeah.
Within 4 days after the mass murder-suicide, the severe condition of the bodies made further visual identification impossible. Jim Jones was one of the few whose features and clothing provided enough proof of identity that the team felt confident when they put his body in the body bag. He was among the first to be cataloged. The bodies were extremely bloated, deformed by so many hours of exposure to the heat of the tropical sun that some of them had already burst, and it deposited copious amounts of putrid, foul-smelling bodily fluids on the ground. During the identification process, bodies had to be individually checked. pockets turned inside out, and any ID bracelets read and recorded. This meant handling and touching each rapidly decomposing body, and many of them had already displayed millions of eggs laid by the incredible horde of flies drawn to the scene. Maggots covered the entire area where the Jonestown lay dead. With more delays, they were contemplating other ways of handling the bodies since help was slow to arrive. They could bury the bodies in the jungle, just go ahead and do that, or try slowing decomposition with embalming, which sounds not possible at that stage. Like, I think you're a little far gone to try to preserve that. Back to the task of IDing victims, very few of the dead carried wallets or wore jewelry. By Tuesday, the bodies were badly bloated, with heads resembling those of severely hydrocephalic children. They were in such an advanced state of decomposition, recognition was impossible. The skin color of almost every victim was dark blue-black, making it difficult to even determine the ethnicity or race of a corpse. The first attempts to pick up the bodies by grasping their heads and limbs and lifting them into the body bags, more than often than not, caused a limb or two, or even the head, to become disconnected from the bloated torso. When this happened, of course, the more fluids would come from the body part, being held by the hapless soldier, and an even larger amount would flow from the torso as it landed on the ground. Because the bodies were in such close proximity to one another, it wasn't long before the soil in Jonestown became a muddy mixture of dirt and body fluids. The dead had been harder to deal with. It was obvious that soldiers couldn't cope, and there was said to be only 30 body bags in the entire country. What's more, the heat was relentless, and Jones had poisoned all the water.
Oh, awesome.
The bodies of Jonestown dead were airlifted Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, thousands of miles across the country from where most of the relatives and friends of the temple members lived. Autopsies were performed on 7 of the bodies, but the length of time between deaths and autopsies, which had been complicated by the embalming procedures, made the autopsies meaningless.
Yeah.
Most of the bodies received nothing more than a cursory identification. If ID was possible, the families were notified to make arrangements for disposal. Many bodies, especially those of the children, were never identified, and some family members were too poor or too ashamed to claim their relatives' remains. Those 408 bodies are buried in a mass grave at Evergreen Cemetery in Oakland, where a memorial service is held November 18th at 11 a.m. every year. The base's resources were overwhelmed, and numerous individuals tasked with moving or identifying the bodies suffered symptoms of PTSD. In many cases, responsibility for cremation of the remains was distributed to Dover area funeral homes. Recently, in August of 2014, the never-claimed cremated remains of 9 people from Jonestown were found in a formal funeral home in Dover,
Delaware.
Yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure it was Delaware. Those 5 were publicly identified in the hope that the family would claim the remains, and all 5 remain unclaimed by the family and have also been interred with the other buried at the Evergreen Cemetery in Oakland. Who covered the cost of cleanup? Let me tell you about that. As we remember, the People's Temple were actually flush with cash, even though they poor-mouthed. During the transport to Guyana, cash was brought over on the bodies of temple members, and the value of the People's Temple at the end of its reign was $30 million, but the U.S. was only able to recover about $13 million of it. A good bit was gone from Jim's secret hiding place, a Bible. He had a lot of money in there, and they knew it was there. They had seen it, and then somebody did a 5-finger discount. Happily ever after. You know what I mean? That was so terrible. They happily ever after.
Oh. They're like, I'm going to take this Bible and go say a few prayers.
My Jim ain't using it. Oh, Jesus. There was also a ton of offshore accounts in like Marceline, Stephen, and other members' names, but there's still no clue of where a lot of that money went.
Mm.
The rest, so about $7 million of the money went to cleaning up everything in Guyana. The rest of the money was disseminated amongst the survivors and families. Larry Layton, who had fired a gun at several people aboard the Cessna, was initially found not guilty of attempted murder in a Guyanese court, employing the defense that he was brainwashed. Acquittal in the Guyanese court did not free Layton. He was promptly deported back to the U.S., which is funny. You get deported the reverse way. I bet he was fucking scared shitless, son. He was arrested by the U.S. Marshals Service upon arrival in San Francisco, and he could not be tried in the U.S. for attempted murders of Gosney, Bagby, Dale Parks, and the Cessna pilot on Guyanese soil, and was instead tried under a federal statute against assassinating members of Congress and internationally protected people. He was convicted of conspiracy and of aiding and abetting the murder of Ryan and the attempted murder of Dwyer. Paroled in 2002, he was the only person ever to be held criminally responsible for the events in Jonestown. Now deserted, the compound in Jonestown was first tended by the Guyanese government following the deaths. The government then allowed its reoccupation by Hmong, Jimmy? H-M-O-N-G, Hmong, I believe. Hmong refugees from Laos for a few years in the early 1980s. The buildings and grounds were looted by local Guyanese people, but were not taken over because of their association with the mass killing. Like, I will take these beds, thank you, but
I don't want to sleep here or anything.
I'm like, have you seen this ground? Ooh. The buildings were mostly destroyed by a fire in the mid-1980s, after which the ruins were left to decay and be reclaimed by the jungle. And there are videos that you can look up. I found a whole mess of them on TikTok where people are going present day. There is a memorial there for, the massacre. And I want to say the pavilion's still kind of there, but not most of it's jungle again.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how this untouched piece of earth got carved out by very determined people to only be reclaimed again. And that's the story of Jonestown.
Well, I'd say that was fun, but my biggest takeaway from it all is I'm really pissed that he couldn't even splurge on some Kool-Aid. He had to use Flavor Aid.
Shit. On toilet paper.
Like, come on, motherfucker. You got millions of dollars. You can't spend
millions.
10 cents a packet versus 5 cents a packet.
It's not the socialist way, okay? You'll be self-sufficient. I just still never, I am looking at toilet paper with a whole new appreciation right now. Right. Just having that and a toilet.
Yeah.
First world problems. I've complained about toilets not being the right height or shape or whatever. The motherfuckers had holes in the ground. I would have fell in that. You know that. Good and damn well. I would have died from some weird ass fucking dookie disease.
All jokes aside, though, very sad. He had the perfect setup, though, to brainwash these people and get them to willingly. Starvation, lack of sleep. You can get people to do whatever you want to do.
It's wild. There are people who carry great influence in this world. Some of them are I was going to say an historical figure, but all our historical figures are kind of fucked at the same time. I'll say George Washington. How about that? Some of them carry influence like that in this creation of a nation. And then some hold influence like Jim Jones and can destroy whole swaths of people and families. And it's crazy how one decision changes all.
Yep.
And as you heard, all those people who are like, you're the one. You're the one. Just make sure it's not painful.
And it was.
It was.
Well, I'm glad to be done with that.
Yeah, that was we could split this up in 2 episodes, but I did not think I could. There's a couple times that I was like, please don't cry, please don't cry, please don't cry. Listening to the whole tape itself, it's not even about what Jim Jones says. It's the noises in the background.
Yeah.
You can hear Marceline screaming, and that's a scream that only a mother can make. That mother who's lost her child. And so I'll be living with that one for the rest of my life.
Yay. Thanks for that, Jim Jones.
You're welcome, guys. So if you made it through this episode, good on you.
Congratulations.
Sorry about the nightmares.
Yep.
So I want to go back over my sources one more time. The Road to Jonestown by Jeff Gunn. Last podcast on the left did a series from episodes 300 to 304. Rolling Stone Magazine, Wikipedia, PBS, and the Alternative Considerations to Jonestown and the People's Temple by San Diego University, which is also the Jonestown Institute Archive. I feel like it's very important. We need to talk about coal safety just one more time. Go for the Kool-Aid. Number one. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
like not Kool-Aid versus Flavor Aid. Go upgrade it.
Okay,
I'm gonna upgrade. You're like, whoa, that's not
I'm
cult
gonna say
safety.
I don't agree with Jennifer, y'all.
See, I'm so special. Some of the resources that are available are the Freedom of Mind Resource Center, the Cult Education Institute, Encourage Survivors of Cults and Abuse, Hope Valley Counseling for the UK listeners, International Cultic Studies Association and its partner, Spiritual Abuse Records. If this series has made you realize that you are in a spot of danger and you need help and you don't know where to turn and you're not comfortable doing it on your own, reach out. We'll help. We'll find somebody who can help. We're here for you. So let's talk about all the normal fun stuff like merch. We got that. You can wear some cute stuff. You could definitely follow us on our socials. If you really enjoyed this series, definitely give us a comment. Let me know what you hated, what you loved. I do love hearing feedback on how we tell our stories.
Samesies.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I just want to give you what you want. You know what I'm saying? Help me help you. And if you love it, don't forget to subscribe and rate us on all the platforms you listen to, Amazon, Spotify, Pandora, wherever you get your podcast. And DM us if you have your own Too Close to Home stories.
Please.
We love to hear them. I've got some cryptid Too Close to Home stories from a coworker coming up soon. But until next time,
stay safe.
Keep your head on a swivel.
And don't bring it so close to home that you drink the Kool-Aid. Don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't go to Guyana, first of all, unless you're going to, enjoy like Georgetown. But if someone says, listen, I got a sweet spot on the border of Venezuela, say I'm going to pass.
Ask if it's got plumbing.
Yeah. Plumbing, air conditioning, and no pavilions. We don't need any pavilions.
Mm-mm. No AC, no toilet, no
Count
vacuum.
me out. I'm out. Deuces. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode of Too Close to Home, don't forget to rate and subscribe to us on most platforms. Follow us on our social media at Too Close Home Pod on Facebook, at Too Close Podcast on Instagram, or if you have your own Too Close to Home experience, shoot us your story at tooclosetohome@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening.